Science. For a lot of us, it's the thing that explains how the world works. Gravity keeps us grounded, atoms make up everything, and Schrödinger keeps his cats in a box. But science is also the thing that gets warped, twisted, and sometimes mangled into truly bizarre myths that somehow just keep going. Today, we're going to dive into some of the most unusual scientific myths, and why in a world of facts and logic, these myths are still floating around like helium-filled nonsense balloons. Let's start with a classic, the idea that we only use 10% of our brains. According to this myth, there's a whole 90% of brain capacity just sitting there, untapped, and that's often the cue for a movie to suggest that if we could access it, we'd all be unstoppable super geniuses who can, I don't know, levitate things of our mind or start predicting the stock market. Here's the truth, we do use 100% of our brains. Not necessarily all at once, because that would be like trying to run every app on your phone simultaneously, while also downloading updates and maybe toasting a slice of bread. But over the course of a day, we're using all of it. The parts responsible for vision, motor skills, processing whether or not to reply to a group text, and everything else. Where did this mystery come from? Well, it's a mystery, but some historians think it started from early neuroscience research, where scientists saw a lot of quiet areas in the brain and assumed that those areas did nothing, which is a bit like looking at a computer and saying, well, this microchip doesn't look like it's doing anything, so we must only be using 10% of it. In reality, all those quiet parts are extremely important. They're just not buzzing with activity all the time. The next myth probably hits close to home if you're like me and grew up hearing, milk helps you grow big and strong. It's a classic piece of parental wisdom. Now, milk is a great source of calcium and vitamin D, which are important for bone health. But drinking a glass of milk isn't going to make you sprout like a beanstalk overnight. The truth is, height and growth are mostly determined by genetics, with diet playing a supporting role. Drinking milk might contribute to strong bones, but it's not going to turn a 5-foot kid into a 6-foot adult, no matter how much they chug. Plus, you can get the same nutrients from other foods like leafy greens, nuts, or fish. So while milk can be healthy, it's not exactly the magical growth elixir it's made out to be. Moving on to a myth that seems like it should be true. Sugar makes kids hyperactive and wild. I mean, we've all seen kids at birthday parties tearing around like they're powered by rocket fuel, usually right after the cake. But science says otherwise. There's actually very little evidence that sugar causes hyperactivity. The idea came from a few small studies that have since been debunked, but it stuck around like gum on the bottom of a shoe. In reality, that high energy at parties is often just excitement. There's a lot going on. People, games, sugar, and excitement. It's the perfect storm for some energetic chaos. But that doesn't mean sugar is what's causing it. So sugar doesn't make kids hyper, but believing sugar makes kids hyper, that's something parents definitely do. It's even been proven that if a parent thinks their child has had sugar, they'll rate their behaviour as more hyper, even if no sugar was involved at all. So maybe it's just time to cut the cake a little slack. Now, here's one that almost sounds like it could be true. The myth that lightning never strikes the same place twice. It's got that poetic ring to it, doesn't it? Like fate or the laws of the universe, except it's complete nonsense. Places like tall buildings or exposed cliffs get struck by lightning a lot. The Empire State Building, for example, gets struck around 20 to 25 times every year. Lightning doesn't have a memory or a checklist. It doesn't think, oh, I've already hit that spot, better try a new one. It's just following the path of least resistance. And if that's the same building 10 times in a row, well, so be it. And finally, the big one. Eating carrots will help you see in the dark. Now, carrots are good for you. They're full of vitamin A, and vitamin A is good for eye health. But will they turn you into a nocturnal superhero able to see in the dark? Not quite. This one actually has an interesting origin story. It involves World War II, secret military technology, and a brilliant bit of clever propaganda. But if you're curious on learning more, you'll have to check out my other video at the top of your screen. So those are some of the most bizarre science myths that are still kicking around today. It turns out that we humans have a knack for coming up with wild ideas, and even wilder ways to explain the world around us. Some are completely harmless, some are amusing, and some, well, I wouldn't recommend trying at home. In the meantime, if you hear that you can grow taller, get hyperactive, and improve your vision all by eating cake and carrots, maybe check the science first. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.